So there I was, Crix the Mighty, apex predator of the Vorthan system, scrolling through the Galactic Council's latest bureaucratic masterpiece, the Universal Species Threat Assessment Database. What a laugh. Apparently some pencil-pushing administrator decided the galaxy needed an official list of which species you should and shouldn't mess with. As if a true predator needed permission slips to hunt. The database was your typical government work, full of obvious entries like crystalline hive minds, extreme danger, and void wraiths approach with caution. But then, I stumbled across something that made my mandibles click with amusement. Humans. Filed under administrative review pending, with a note that read insufficient data for proper classification. Insufficient data? Please, I've been tracking these soft pink bipeds for months. No natural weapons, no armored hide, no venomous secretions. They couldn't even see properly in the dark. The only reason they made it off their little blue marble was because they figured out how to strap explosives to metal tubes and point them at the sky. Hardly impressive by galactic standards. What really sealed the deal was watching their colony on Kepler 442b. Humans wandering around in their little groups, completely oblivious to the dozen different ways I could end them. They even brought their offspring with them, because apparently survival instincts were optional for their species. Speaking of offspring, that's when I spotted him. Perfect specimen of human vulnerability, maybe 8 of their solar cycles old, with dark hair and the kind of carefree attitude that screamed easy target. The little cub was playing some primitive game with colored spheres near the colony's outer perimeter, completely alone and unguarded. Tommy Martinez, according to the colony's public records. Son of Maria and Jake Martinez, classified as agricultural specialists. Yeah, right. Agricultural specialists who needed military-grade transport ships. These humans really thought they were clever with their cover stories. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that little Tommy had just wandered far enough from the settlement to make this interesting. The kid was tossing his spears against a rock wall, completely absorbed in his simple-minded entertainment. He hadn't even noticed my ship's shadow passing overhead. This was almost too easy. One quick swoop, grab the cub, and I'd have myself a nice human specimen to study. Maybe I'd even do the galaxy a favor and submit my findings to that pathetic threat assessment database. Show them what a real predator could accomplish when the Council's bureaucrats were too squeamish to do proper research. I activated my ship's silent descent protocol and prepared my capture nets. Time to show this pending review species exactly where they belonged on the galactic food chain. After all, what could possibly go wrong when hunting something as harmless as a human cub? Famous last words, as they say. Though I wouldn't learn that particular human expression until much, much later. The snatch went exactly as planned. One moment little Tommy was bouncing his spheres, the next he was secured in my ship's holding bay. Clean, quiet, professional. I was already composing my species assessment report when I heard something that made my blood freeze. Giggling. The human cub was giggling. I checked my atmospheric readings twice. No nerve gas leaks, no hallucinogens, nothing that would explain why my captive sounded like he was having the time of his short little life. When I finally worked up the courage to look at the holding bay's monitor, there was Tommy, sitting cross-legged and staring directly at the camera with the kind of bright-eyed curiosity that should have been terror. "Hi there, Mr. Space Monster," he said, waving like we were old friends. "Are you gonna eat me, or are we just hanging out? Because I'm supposed to be home for dinner in an hour and Mom gets really cranky when I'm late." Cranky. The cub was worried about his mother being cranky. I activated the bay's communication system, mostly because my predator training manual never covered this scenario. "Silence, human spawn. You are now the prisoner of Crix the Mighty, and you will—" Wow, you can talk. That's so cool. Hey, are those real teeth, or are they like fake scary teeth? My cousin Danny has fake vampire teeth, but they're just plastic. Yours look way more real. Do you floss? Because my dentist says flossing is super important for dental hygiene. Even for weird teeth. I closed my mandibles with a sharp click. This was not going according to plan. Are you perhaps unfamiliar with the concept of being captured, young human? Tommy tilted his head, considering this seriously. Oh, I know about being captured. We learned about it in school. Bad guys take people, and then the good guys come rescue them, and everything works out fine. Are you the bad guy? You seem pretty nice for a bad guy. Most bad guys don't ask questions about dental hygiene awareness. This was ridiculous. I was Crix the Mighty, terror of 17 star systems, and I was being lectured about oral care by a cub who should have been weeping for his parental units. "Do you require atmospheric adjustments?" I tried, thinking maybe the ship's environment was affecting his cognitive functions. "Water? Nutrition supplements? Ooh, do you have juice boxes? I love juice boxes. Orange is my favorite, but grape's okay too. And maybe some crackers. Getting kidnapped makes me hungry. That's when my ship's communication array crackled to life with an incoming transmission from the colony. I figured it would be some panicked authority figure begging for negotiations. Instead, I got this. Martinez household, this is Maria. If you're the idiot who took my son, you have exactly 10 minutes to bring him back before I get annoyed. Jake, honey, did you remember to pack the plasma charges? A male voice responded in the background. Got the charges, the thermal detonators, and that new disruptor rifle we've been meaning to test. Should I bring the orbital bombardment beacon, or is that overkill for one kidnapper? Bring it anyway. I hate when these things drag on. The transmission cut to static. I stared at the communication panel, my confidence beginning to develop some concerning cracks. Oh, that's Mom and Dad, Tommy said cheerfully. They're probably coming to get me. They're really good at getting me. One time when I got lost at the Space Mall, they found me in like 5 minutes. Of course, they also accidentally shut down the mall's entire security grid and triggered 3 evacuation protocols, but they said that was just a coincidence. I was starting to suspect that the Galactic Council's sufficient data classification might have been less about incompetence and more about survival instinct. Let me tell you something about human parental units. When most species discover their offspring have been taken, there's a predictable pattern. Panic, despair, frantic calls to authorities, maybe some crying. Standard prey behavior across the galaxy. Humans start making shopping lists. I decided to monitor their communications, partly for tactical intelligence and partly because Tommy had started asking if I had any board games. The kid was treating my state-of-the-art holding bay like a really boring sleepover. Okay, so we've got one kidnapper, species unknown, probably off-world based on the energy signature, came Maria Martinez's voice through the comm system. Her tone was the same one you'd use to discuss grocery shopping. Jake, what's our standard loadout for single-saget extraction in civilian territory? Well, we don't want to level the whole area, Jake replied thoughtfully. Remember what happened on Proxima Station when we got a little enthusiastic with the particle cannons? That was one time, and technically the station was scheduled for demolition anyway. We just moved up the timeline by 3 years, Maria. Details. So, personal weapons only then? I'm thinking the MK7 assault rifles, thermal imaging scopes, maybe those new plasma grenades the quartermaster recommended. I nearly choked on my own respiratory fluid. These were agricultural specialists? What kind of crops required plasma grenades? Don't forget the portable shield generator, Jake added. And maybe bring the emergency medical kit. Not for us, obviously, but whoever took Tommy might need some patching up after we're done explaining our position. Good thinking. Oh, and honey, pack the restraint cuffs. The high tensile ones, not the standard issue. I want to have a nice long chat with whoever thought it was smart to mess with our boy. The casual professionalism in their voices was more terrifying than any war cry I'd ever heard. These weren't panicked parents. These were problem solvers. And I was rapidly becoming their problem to solve. Actually, Maria continued, maybe we should check the galactic registry first, see if we can identify the species. Might help us calibrate our response appropriately. There was a pause. Then Jake's voice came back with what I can only describe as disappointed confusion. Says here the kidnapper's ship signature matches Vorthan design. Maria, didn't we deal with some Vorthans during that mining dispute on Kepler 438c? Oh right, those guys. The ones with the mandibles in the superiority complex. Remember how they kept talking about being apex predators until you introduced them to the concept of human persistence hunting? They'd be learned fast, especially after that 27-hour chase through the asteroid field. Think this is one of their relatives? Could be. Vorthans aren't usually this stupid though. Most of them know better by now. I want to be clear about something here. At this point in the conversation, I was still operating under the assumption that I was the predator in this situation. Sure, these humans seemed unusually well armed for farmers, but every species had its military types. I was Crix the Mighty. I'd hunted across 17 systems. I wasn't about to be intimidated by 2 bipeds with delusions of competence. That confidence lasted exactly until I heard Maria's next words. Jake, pull up the family emergency protocols. I think this calls for implementation level 7. Level 7? Are you sure? That seems like overkill for one Vorthan. Our son is involved. There's no such thing as overkill. I didn't know what implementation level 7 meant, but the way Jake's voice went quiet suggested it wasn't good news for anyone on the receiving end. Copy that. Level 7 protocols are a go. I'll prep the ship and contact the local authorities. Standard procedure? Standard procedure. Tell them we're handling a family emergency and to please maintain a safe distance from the target zone. Don't want any civilian casualties when we resolve this. The transmission ended, leaving me alone with the growing realization that maybe, just maybe, I had made what humans would call a tactical error. You know what's really embarrassing? When you're trying to be a terrifying space predator and your hostage starts giving you helpful life advice. Mr. Creeks, Tommy said, somehow having learned my name from my ship's automated systems. "I think you might be in trouble. When Mom uses her work voice, that usually means someone's about to have a really bad day. And she definitely used her work voice." "Work voice?" I managed, though my vocal cords seemed to be malfunctioning. The voice she uses when she has to go handle business stuff. Like when those pirate guys tried to steal our cargo shipments last month. She used her work voice then, too. And afterward, Dad had to help her clean pirate guts out of her favorite boots. Pirate guts. Out of boots. I was beginning to think these weren't agricultural specialists. That's when my ship's proximity alarm started screaming. I switched to the external cameras, expecting to see the colony's pathetic security forces. Instead, I watched in growing horror as vessel after vessel lifted off from the nearby trade stations and began heading away from the system at maximum burn. Not toward us, away from us. "Warning," my ship's AI announced in that annoyingly cheerful tone. "Multiple distress beacons detected. Local traffic control advises immediate departure from current sector." I pulled up the communications array and started monitoring the evacuation chatter. What I heard made my chitin crawl. "This is Freight Hauler Gamma 7 requesting emergency departure clearance. We've got word that humans are activating family protocols in this sector." "Clearance granted, Gamma 7. Suggest maximum burn until you clear the system perimeter." "Copy that, Control. Question though, what exactly are family protocols?" There was a long pause before the traffic controller responded. "Let's just say you don't want to find out. Safe travels, Gamma 7. I switched channels, hoping for better news. Instead, I got this gem. "Attention all vessels. This is Captain Throck of the Meridian Destroyer Fang of Kasich. We are hereby evacuating this sector on direct orders from High Command. Any ship remaining in the area does so at their own risk." A Meridian Destroyer? Those psychopaths evacuated from nothing. They considered orbital bombardment a form of artistic expression. If they were running scared, I was definitely missing something important. "Hey, Mr. Crix," Tommy piped up, apparently monitoring the same channels. "You might want to let me go now. I mean, I'm having fun and all, but when the Meridians start running away, that's usually a pretty big hint." "You know about the Meridians?" I asked, though I was honestly afraid of the answer. "Oh, sure. Dad worked with some of them back when he was in the service. He says they're okay for space lizards, but they get nervous around humans because of that thing that happened at the Battle of Rigel Station." The Battle of Rigel Station. Even I had heard of that massacre. An entire Krillian invasion fleet, gone in 47 minutes. The official reports blamed a technical malfunction, but the rumor mill suggested something far more disturbing. "Tommy," I said carefully, "what exactly did your father do in the service?" "Oh, this and that. Mostly he helped solve problems for people. He's really good at solving problems. Mom, too. They met when they were both solving the same problem on different sides of a war. Then they figured out they could solve problems better together, so they got married. Different sides of a war." I was starting to get a very clear picture of what kind of problems Maria and Jake Martinez specialized in solving. That's when my computer helpfully chimed with an incoming priority message from the Galactic Registry. I'd completely forgotten about my earlier query regarding human threat classifications. "Species update alert," the message began. "Recent review of human classification has been completed. Previous designation, administrative review pending, has been updated to extreme caution, protective protocols active." I scrolled down to the detailed notes, my confidence evaporating with each line. "Warning, humans demonstrate unprecedented protective responses when offspring are threatened. Standard predator-prey dynamics do not apply. Recommend immediate disengagement if human young are involved in any capacity. Previous field reports indicate human parental units will pursue threats across multiple star systems and have been observed ignoring basic survival instincts when protecting offspring." The file included a list of notable incidents that read like a catalog of nightmare scenarios. The siege of Tau Ceti, where 2 human parents held off an entire slaver fleet for 6 days. The Proxima Station incident, apparently involving the total destruction of a kidnapping ring using improvised explosives and creative engineering. The Great Hunt of Vega Prime, where a human father tracked his daughter's captors through 17 systems over 2 years, leaving a trail of very dead pirates in his wake. "Oh," the file concluded helpfully, "and under no circumstances should human protective protocols be triggered in civilian areas. Collateral damage calculations are significant." "Mr. Crix," Tommy's voice cut through my mounting panic. "You're looking kinda pale. Well, paler. Do you need some water? You should probably drink more water. Hydration is important." I stared at this small human offering me health advice while his parents were apparently mobilizing what sounded like a private army to retrieve him. "Tommy," I said slowly, "exactly how much trouble am I in?" The kid thought about this seriously, counting on his little fingers. Well, you took me without asking, which is against the rules, and you made Mom use her work voice, which is pretty bad, and you're doing this in a populated system, which means Dad's gonna worry about civilian safety, so he'll probably use the careful weapons instead of the fun ones. The careful weapons? Yeah, you know. The ones that only kill what you're aiming at instead of everything in a 5-mile radius. Dad says the careful weapons are more challenging to use, but they're better for public relations. I looked at my sensor readings again. The evacuation was accelerating. Even the Meridian destroyer was now broadcasting warnings to stay clear of the human intervention zone. Tommy, I asked, though I really didn't want to know the answer. What's implementation level 7? The kid's face lit up like I'd asked about his favorite birthday present. Oh, that's when Mom and Dad stop pretending to be farmers and go back to being soldiers. It's pretty exciting, actually. There's usually lots of explosions, and afterward they take me out for ice cream to celebrate successful mission completion. Soldiers. Of course they were soldiers. I was so Dad. You want to know the difference between a predator and a human parent? A predator hunts when it's hungry. A human parent hunts when it's disappointed. And let me tell you, there's nothing in the galaxy more terrifying than disappointed human parents. I learned this exactly 17 minutes after my conversation with Tommy, when my ship's hull started vibrating from what I initially thought was engine malfunction. Turns out it was just the Martinez family dropship performing what I can only describe as an aggressive docking procedure. Mr. Crix, Tommy said helpfully, you might want to turn off your ship's weapons systems. Mom gets cranky when people point guns at her, and she's already having kind of a rough day. I haven't activated any weapons, I protested, though my hand was hovering over the combat controls. Your ship automatically targeted theirs when they got close. It's right there on your screen. See the little red dot? That means you're being hostile. I looked at my tactical display, and sure enough, my ship's defensive systems had locked onto the approaching vessel. Standard protocol for any potential threat. What wasn't standard was the complete lack of return targeting from the Martinez ship. They weren't even bothering to aim at me. Shouldn't they be, pointing weapons back? I asked. Tommy shrugged. Why would they? You're not dangerous. Not dangerous. A Vorthon apex predator, not dangerous. The kid said it like he was explaining why water was wet. That's when the docking clamps engaged with enough force to rattle my teeth. Professional, efficient, and absolutely terrifying in its casualness. These people weren't storming my ship like angry parents. They were boarding it like they owned it. The airlock cycled and I got my first look at Maria and Jake Martinez in person. Remember how I said humans looked soft and vulnerable? I was thinking of the wrong humans. Maria Martinez stood about 5.5 feet tall, with the kind of build that suggested she could probably bench press my ship. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she was wearing what looked like casual civilian clothes. Except, casual civilian clothes don't usually come with integrated armor plating and enough weapon attachments to outfit a small army. Jake Martinez was taller, broader, and had the easy smile of someone who genuinely enjoyed his work, which, considering his work apparently involved creative problem-solving with military-grade explosives, was not reassuring. "Hi, sweetie," Maria called out, completely ignoring me as she entered my holding bay. "Sorry we're late. Traffic was terrible and your father insisted on bringing the entire arsenal." "It's not the entire arsenal," Jake protested, hefting what looked like a weapon designed to crack planets. "I left the really destructive stuff at home. This is just the essentials." "Essentials," I croaked. Jake finally looked at me, and I got the distinct impression I was being evaluated. Not as a threat, as a problem requiring a specific type of solution. "You must be the kidnapper," he said pleasantly. "I'm Jake Martinez, this is my wife Maria, and you've met our son Tommy. Lovely ship you have here, very spacious." The way he said spacious made it sound like he was already measuring it for a coffin. "Now then," Maria continued, pulling out a device that looked like a cross between a medical scanner and an instrument of torture. "We need to have a little chat about your life choices. Specifically, the choice you made about 43 minutes ago when you decided to take our son without permission. This was meant to be a simple specimen collection," I stammered. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Specimen collection," Maria repeated slowly. "Jake, did you hear that? He called our son a specimen." "I heard it, honey. That's not good." Tommy, meanwhile, had run over to hug his parents like this was a perfectly normal family reunion. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Mr. Crix has been really nice, actually. He asked if I needed water and everything. Though he doesn't have any juice boxes, which is kind of disappointing." "No juice boxes." Jake looked genuinely offended. "What kind of operation are you running here?" "This is a military vessel, not a—" I stopped mid-sentence as I realized how insane that sounded. Maria raised an eyebrow. "A military vessel. For collecting specimens." Of children. When you put it like that, it sounds much worse than intended. Oh, I think it sounds exactly as bad as intended, Jake said, still smiling that terrifying friendly smile. Maria, remember that conversation we had about what we'd do if someone ever tried to hurt Tommy? You mean the one where we agreed that creative and disproportionate response was the only appropriate reaction? That's the one. I want to be very clear about what happened next. These people didn't threaten me. They didn't make dramatic speeches about vengeance or justice. They just started casually discussing the most efficient ways to dismantle my entire existence, while their 8-year-old son played with what appeared to be a military-grade portable shield generator. So what are we thinking? Maria asked, like they were planning a dinner menu. Quick and clean? Or educational? Well, he did feed Tommy and make sure he had water, Jake mused. That shows some basic decency, points for that. True. But he also just admitted to running a military operation focused on kidnapping children. Fair point. Tommy, sweetie, how was your experience as a hostage? Tommy looked up from the shield generator, which he'd somehow activated and was now using as a really expensive toy. It was okay, I guess. Kinda boring, though. Mr. Crix doesn't have any games or snacks or anything fun. His ship is pretty cool, but it needs better entertainment options. Boring, Jake repeated. Maria, he gave our son a boring kidnapping experience. That's almost worse than the specimen collection thing. I know, right? I mean, if you're going to traumatize someone's child, at least put some effort into it. This is just lazy. I was starting to understand why entire fleets evacuated when humans activated family protocols. It wasn't the weapons or the military efficiency that was terrifying. It was the way they could casually discuss your complete destruction while treating it like a minor household chore. Please, I managed to say. I realize now that I have made an error in judgment. Perhaps we could discuss terms for my release. Both parents stopped talking and looked at me with identical expressions of polite confusion. Your release? Maria asked. Oh, honey, Jake said, shaking his head sadly. I think you misunderstand the situation here. You're not the one who gets to negotiate terms. That's when I noticed that sometime during their casual conversation, they'd moved to completely surround me. Professional positioning, cutting off all escape routes, establishing fields of fire. It was like being hunted by very polite, very deadly wolves. Here's what's going to happen, Maria continued, her voice taking on that terrifying work tone Tommy had warned me about. You're going to surrender yourself to local authorities. You're going to provide complete intelligence on any other operations targeting human children. And you're going to spend the rest of your very long life explaining to other would-be kidnappers why messing with human families is a catastrophically bad idea. And if I refuse? Jake's smile widened. Oh, you won't refuse. See, humans have this thing called persistence hunting. We might not be the strongest or the fastest, but we never, ever stop. You could run to the edge of the galaxy and we'd follow you. You could hide in the deepest bunker on the most remote planet and we'd find you. Because you touched our son, and that makes you our problem to solve. Forever, Maria added helpfully. We're very good at holding grudges. Looking at these two humans with their casual competence and their complete certainty that they owned my future, I finally understood why the Galactic Council had marked humans as extreme caution. It wasn't because they were the strongest species in the galaxy. It was because they were the most absolutely terrifying when they decided you needed to be solved. 3 hours later, I was sitting in a holding cell on Kepler 442b, contemplating the complete destruction of my reputation as an apex predator. The local authorities had been surprisingly gentle during my arrest, probably because Maria Martinez had handed me over with a detailed instruction manual on my care and feeding. Feed him twice daily, make sure he has adequate water, and under no circumstances allow him to access the communications array unsupervised, she'd told the station commander. He's not dangerous, but he's definitely stupid, and stupid can be unpredictable. Not dangerous. The ultimate insult to a predator's pride. The worst part? She was absolutely right. You want to know how thoroughly the Martinez family had broken me? I'd voluntarily provided complete intelligence on 17 different smuggling operations, 12 illegal research facilities, and that embarrassing incident where I'd tried to intimidate a Centauri merchant convoy. I'd sung like a particularly verbose space canary, all because Jake Martinez had explained, very patiently, that cooperation would result in a standard legal process, while non-cooperation would result in them treating me as a persistent problem requiring creative solution. The phrase creative solution had been delivered with such pleasant professionalism that I'd started talking immediately. But here's the thing that really haunted me. Tommy Martinez had been grounded. You should have fought back harder, sweetie, Maria had explained to her son while I watched in fascination. When someone tries to take you, the appropriate response is maximum resistance, not polite conversation about dental hygiene. But Mom, he seemed nice enough, and he was asking about flossing, which shows he cares about proper oral care. That's very thoughtful of you, honey, but kidnappers aren't usually interested in your long-term dental health. Next time, remember your training and act accordingly. Training. The 8-year-old human cub had training for kidnapping scenarios. Of course he did. Besides, Jake had added, your mother and I were looking forward to a proper rescue operation. It's been months since we've had an excuse to use the Level 7 protocols. You resolved things too peacefully. They were disappointed that their son's kidnapping hadn't been violent enough. These humans were absolutely insane. From my cell, I could hear the station's communication officer fielding calls from across the sector. Apparently news of the human family intervention had spread, and now every species with a functioning survival instinct was updating their protocols. Attention all vessels, came the broadcast. The Galactic Council has issued the following advisory. Human offspring are to be considered untouchable under all circumstances. Repeat, human children are off limits for any form of interaction, research, or casual contact. Violation of this protocol will result in immediate intervention by human protective units. Sir, the communications officer continued, we're also receiving requests for copies of the Martinez family's tactical assessment. Apparently 17 different species want to study their operational efficiency. The station commander's response was immediate. Absolutely not. The last thing we need is other species trying to replicate human family protocols. File all requests under, are you completely insane? That evening, Tommy Martinez visited me in my cell. His parents had apparently decided this was educational. Hi, Mr. Cricks, he said, settling cross-legged outside the energy barrier. Mom says you're going to be here for a while, so I brought you some juice boxes. Orange flavor. It's my favorite. He slid a small package through the meal slot. Actual juice boxes. The kid had brought treats to the predator who'd kidnapped him. Tommy, I said carefully, aren't you angry with me? I did take you against your will. The boy considered this seriously. Well, you were pretty polite about it. And you did ask if I needed water, which was thoughtful. Plus, Mom says holding grudges is bad for your emotional health, unless the grudge is justified and strategically useful. Your mother has opinions about strategic grudge management? Oh yeah, she's got a whole system. There's short-term grudges for everyday annoyances, medium-term grudges for professional conflicts, and long-term grudges for people who mess with family. You're definitely in the long-term category, but she says that doesn't mean we can't be civilized about it. Civilized. They were going to destroy my entire existence in a civilized manner. Tommy, can I ask you something? How did you know your parents would find you? Because they always do, he said simply. When I was really little, like 5 or 6, I used to test them sometimes. I'd hide in really good spots around the colony, just to see how long it took them to find me. My best time was 4 hours and 17 minutes. And that was when I hid in the old mining tunnels 3 kilometers underground, designed specifically to find you in underground tunnels. Oh yeah. Dad says tracking is just applied problem solving, and Mom says there's no such thing as an unsolvable problem, just problems that require more creative thinking. They found me every single time. The kid had been testing his parents' tracking abilities since he was 5. These humans trained their children in survival scenarios like other species taught basic math. Besides, Tommy continued, they left their jobs in the service to take care of me. They gave up being soldiers so they could be farmers and raise a family. That's a pretty big deal, you know. So when someone tries to mess with me, it's like they're messing with the most important thing Mom and Dad ever did. And there it was. The real reason why touching a human child was the galaxy's newest form of suicide. It wasn't just about parental instincts or protective responses. It was about the fact that these people had voluntarily given up being professional killers to become parents. And anyone who threatened that choice was going to discover exactly what they'd been capable of in their previous careers. 6 months later, I was released into the custody of the Vorthaean Authority with a permanent notation on my record. Reformed through exposure to human family dynamics. Recommend psychological counseling and career retraining. The Galactic Council had updated their database again. Humans were now listed under absolute do not engage, especially the small ones. The entry included detailed warnings about human pack bonding, persistence hunting, and something called proportional response doctrine, which apparently meant that the severity of human retaliation was directly proportional to how much you'd pissed them off. I became something of a celebrity in certain circles, the predator who'd kidnapped a human child and lived to tell about it. Other Vorthans would ask me for details, wanting to know what it was like to face human parents in full protective mode. Imagine, I would tell them, the most professional, competent, absolutely certain killers you've ever encountered. Now imagine they're disappointed in you personally. That's what it's like. Most of them didn't believe me. A few made jokes about soft humans and their emotional attachments. None of them ever tried to test the theory. As for Tommy Martinez, the last I heard he was doing well in school and had started a small business teaching other human children proper hostage protocols. Apparently, there was significant demand for his services among human parents who wanted their offspring better prepared for kidnapping scenarios. Because of course there was. These humans were absolutely, completely, magnificently insane, and I wouldn't recommend messing with their children to my worst enemy. Trust me on this one.